Whatever that clock says, it's 7. So why don't we start up? So this is a workshop meeting, not a formal council meeting. And let's see who we have for roll call. I see Molly, Amber, Pam, Dan. Is anyone online other than the city attorney, who I'm expecting to be online?
I am. Good evening, Mayor and council members.
All right, so there's Nick, and I see the finance director is here and the city administrator. I see 3 department heads that are going to come talk to us in short order. So that's everybody.
Lee, confirming that I'm online as well.
Okay, I was wondering. Okay, so Paloma's here as well. Welcome, everyone. All right, so are we starting up on budget first, I assume? And how do we want to begin?
I will start, if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Ben, could you pull up the slides for the major non-departmental costs?
And Sue, slide that in towards you a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
Sue, is this what you're looking for?
Yes.
All right, just tell me when you want me to move forward.
Okay. So you received the budget last week, and we went over the timeline and for bringing forth the department heads. Tonight, we are going to, as well as talking with water, sewer, and highway, I'm just going to briefly go over some high-level items that are major drivers of the budget that don't fall into departmental lines, or they fall across several departmental lines, like gas and diesel. That's found within most of the department's budget, whereas health insurance is its own department. So I wanted to speak about some of these major cost drivers tonight, and as a precursor to all the actual presentations. So I put the page numbers of where these cost drivers are in the budget, and that's what is on the memo page that I gave to you here. We have gas and diesel. It's in several lines of the budget. On page 9, we have the liability insurance, which I don't have a handout for. We're just going to discuss the costs across the board and what the increases have been. Page 25 is the retirement for the general fund. Police and fire are within their own departmental lines. Page 25 also has our workers' compensation expense. 25 also has our health insurance. And 26 has our serial bonds and bond anticipation notes, and that's in the general fund expense portion of the budget. Ben, you can move to the second page. What I have here is a breakdown of what those major cost drivers, what the total expense is within each of the funds. And as you can see, like for instance, in the general fund, we have gas and diesel, liability insurance, New York State pension, workers' comp, debt service, and health insurance. All of those total up to 36% of the general fund budget. In the water fund, all those items come up to 31% of the total water budget. And within the sewer fund, all those items come up to almost 40% of the sewer budget. So you can see how these are the major items that affect the budget and that we really don't have a lot of control over.
And if you do have control over them, it's in the longer term. It's harder to flex them up and down. For instance, we can reduce debt service over time, but it's not something you do 1 year to the next. You know, it's over time.
There's not a major fluctuation in debt service usually. We actually did have one this year because we paid off some amount. But the New York State pension, workers' comp, those are actuarially determined costs for us, so we really don't have much discretion in that area.
And the liability insurance also is property insurance, so every building that we own, every pump station, every piece of equipment is on an inventory list for replacement value. And that's costly. So as our assets go up, the value of our buildings go up and the replacement costs go up, that also is reflected in that cost.
So any questions on this? This is really just a summary of some major budget items.
And so I know we had an online email with some questions, but I think it might be beneficial to the public to understand what's happening with pensions for us, because it's been a big cost driver for the last 2 years. Do you think we could just speak to some of the changes?
We can.
and
I
what's-
have pensions in one of my slides here, and what we can do is go through these, and then if I didn't cover anything that might have been in the email of the questions asked, we can go over it after. So the first, Ben, you can go to the next slide. The first slide that I have here is the calculation of gas and diesel. And the way that this is calculated is we take a look back of how many gallons of each gas and diesel we use by department. Each person who has a vehicle has a gas key that is coded to their department. So as they use gas and diesel, there's a code that's charged so that we can allocate the cost to each department. So we track the usage, and then come up with a calculation for the next year based on the U.S. Energy Information Administration and what they say that the cost for gas and diesel is going to be next year. So this is data intensive because this is my schedule on how I prepare the calculations. But one of the things I wanted to point out on this schedule is as we implement the EV vehicles with our cars and our light-duty trucks, particularly in the police department, we've been trying to do all the detective cars EV and then start to move towards hybrids with our patrol. So over the course of this, the last 4 years, you can see how in 2021 we used 957 gallons a month in gas. And now, currently in 2024, we're using 839 gallons per month on an average.
Per month?
Per month.
Okay. Wow.
So then I annualize that, and then I calculate it with the price per gas that we anticipate to have next year. One other particularly interesting thing to note about this is how much BVAC has been using. So that's because they're in service, and also, how many do we have out?
We had 3 ambulances actually in the field today from BVAC. So to me, the story of BVAC going up in terms of, yeah, thank you, Pete. We were having trouble with your mic online. BVAC really has increased its operations. It had struggled through COVID, and many of you know we did a deal to subsidize BVAC and bring in ambulance. They have performed very, very well. We had 4 simultaneous calls today. 3 of them were handled by BVAC and 1 by ambulance. The other thing is that they do compensate us for the gas that they get from us. We get it at a discount over what they would get. We pass that discount on to them, but they do pay for our
Right.
cost of the...
You'll see that in the revenue section in the general fund. There's nothing else to really note on here except that our overall usage besides BVAC is going down.
I saw that the estimate for BVAC is lower for 2020 than for 2024. Can you kind of connect that with what you and Chris just said?
It's all an average, so you'll see that the police are lower than, or I'm sorry, they're higher than what they had been in 2024, but
Right.
BVAC is lower. It's all an average, so it will work out. I like to leave it, would not mess with in trending one up and trending another down. I just leave it as the estimate.
It's
So
the 4 numbers. It's the 4 annual numbers added together, divided by
Divide-
4.
okay.
It's just a straight average.
Okay, yes.
And VVAC is also putting into service their first electric ambulance. Jonathan Jacobson got a member item for them to do that. So they're moving in that direction as well.
Great. Is that then an item that we might end up needing? But it sounds like they reimburse us for the
They do. They
gas, so-
actually pay us for the cost of it. But
Okay.
because we buy in such quantity, we get a better cost per gallon than they would.
Right, so even if they end up using more than that average?
It's fine.
We would-
It
we would
nets
bill them.
Yeah.
out to zero for
Right.
us.
Thank you.
Next slide, Ben. The next slide is our pension cost summary, and this is just taking a look from year over year. I'm on pension costs, right? Did I skip one?
No, you're on the right
Okay.
one.
Sorry. I don't have my glasses. They're all scratched on the lens, and I really can't see out of them, so I don't want to wear my sunglasses in here. So, okay, the next one is the pension cost summary, and we're showing the year over year. And ERS increased, ERS is Employee Retirement System, that's all others besides police and fire. It increased in 2025 $106,000, and PFRS increased $245,000. So an average of both of them of about 15%. When I had sent out the New York State the annual financial report on the pension plan, and looking through it, and it's not something I look through every year, but I did look at some of the appendixes where it showed what may have been some of the cost drivers. And significantly that stood out to me was that in 2021, especially police and fire, the number of retirees went from 1,400 a year to over 1,600 a year. So that tells me, at least in what I know to be true, that there was some incentives to retire for some places that were struggling, particularly New York State, during those years. Plus, the police are not staying beyond their 20 years. They're retiring right then, and it looks like that trend is averaging up. So there's more of a draw in the New York State pension system than previous years. There's also other factors that we could see in that report is their investment allocations. Maybe some of the investments have gone up recently. There was a lot more draw on the system, the people withdrawing from it. The contributions are what the city contributes. So it's an actuarially determined lump sum payment that needs to be contributed to the New York State pension system to sustain it. And that's divvied up among all the municipalities in New York State, the state itself, any agencies that there's members, and charged to us. One other interesting note to factor, and especially with PFRS, is our cost in the last 6 years has doubled. I don't expect that trend to continue, like the upwards 15%, 20%. But we did take a couple of hard years hit. I think, Lee, you sent an email to the state about it. Did they get back to you?
No, it was to NICOM.
Oh, it was to Nikon.
NICOM was putting together their legislative priorities, and my suggestion was to look at this and see if at least the investment return component could be, smoothed out, right? Because there's two elements, right? How many people are claiming pension, and you're saying that's going up, and that's really good information. But the other one is just, who bears the risk of returns doing well or not well? Right? And I don't actually know the mix of the two, which is why I needed to be careful how I said it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, were you able to take a look at the report that I sent you? Today, it was today.
Oh,
No.
then no.
It had some of the investment summary of what they are investing in. It had the audited financial statements, and so that does tell you somewhat. But The state comptroller is the sole trustee of that plan. So they have committees, obviously, and professionals that maintain it, but
Yeah, this is the first time I'm seeing the 5 years of data and also your statement that, the pension costs have doubled in 6 years, right?
right.
Which
So
is pretty amazing. That's a big number.
it's a big number. We have a couple of, and it's based on tiers in each, in how we're charged.
Yep.
So the tier 2 is non-contributory. Most of the tier 4 is non-contributory. And by non-contributory, I mean the individuals don't contribute. Right now, like tier 6, which I am in, I contribute 6% of my salary to my pension plan, and Chris as well. So.
Thank you for contributing to my pension fund.
Yes, I
appreciate
take
that.
care of you.
You do.
And that was some pension reform that they had done a number of years ago. So the city's contribution for tier 6 is significantly less than, let's say, tier 2. So as some of the tier 2s retire from city workforce, we don't pay on their behalf anymore. So as more people come into tier 6, it should be less cost for us. Anything else? Did that cover it, you think? Okay.
Do we know roughly how many people this is covering who worked for the city? Do we kind of keep track of that? I assume it's based on our employees rather
We
than a state
don't keep
average?
track of that.
Okay.
The pension plan itself does, but it doesn't break out City of Beacon itself. So, but it would be every retiree who worked full-time here. I can guesstimate right now, just based on who's on our health insurance, that we have probably 150.
Yeah.
Great.
That's
And-
not how
and
we're
you'll see-
charged, though.
And you'll see on the next slide, a lot of them also still carry components of our health care.
Yeah, that's what made me ask the
And you'll see
question
the numbers
of-
there.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the benefits.
So the
we
way
offer.
the city is charged, though, is based on current year reported income, earnings.
Okay, so it's not based on the
It's not on,
strict
it's not
number of
based on
individuals.
who's withdrawing. That's the plan as a whole.
Okay.
We are charged our percent contribution based on our reported salaries to New York State on current employees.
And we won't get into pension liabilities.
Oh, no.
Okay.
That is not
I
in
understand.
the
It's not in the
budget.
budget.
That's
what-
just a
we won't go
number.
there. Yep.
The next, Ben, do you want to go into the next slide? Health insurance. This is a lot of data, but what this is a summary of all of our, it's a huge workbook that I have that it's a summary of all of our employees, all of our retirees, what plan they're in, what the cost is of those plans, how much they are reimbursing the city for. So this is how I develop the numbers that go into the budget itself. And it's based on actual premium equivalents for each person that is taking health, dental, or vision. As you can see, individually, health insurance is the biggest cost driver in the city. So, which is, if you, in the top section, you'll see gross health costs across general water and sewer, and that total is 4.8 million. So I break it down because I calculate per plan, and so we have retirees on Empire, retirees on NYSHIP. We reimburse Medicare Part B premiums as we're required to. And then we have the actives health insurance costs as well. So I break all that down and then add it back together to put into the budget. One of the questions today in the email was about the reimbursement revenue. That's the next line down where it says retirees reimburse and actives reimburse. That actually is a revenue in the general water and sewer, and that is the amount that's withheld for active employees, or the amounts that the retirees actually send in for payments for their portion of health and dental. So, and you see that we get reimbursed $576,000 out of that 4.8 million. The net being 4.2 million is the city's share. Then I do the same thing for our dental and the same thing our vision, and this is used to develop the numbers that go into the budget. Any questions on that?
And the reason Susan used the word premium equivalent is we don't pay premiums to an insurance company that then pays for everything. We're self-insured, so we have actuarial computations of how much we should be putting aside to cover the costs that they've seen over a period of years.
Or how much we should be charging. So we pay claims, we pay stop-loss premiums, there's administrative fee components, so we're not just paying a premium each month to an insurance company.
That's right.
Ben, next slide.
Uh,
Next.
Next.
Okay. Long-term debt. So this is a very simplified, condensed version of our debt schedules. And this has been asked in years past to provide, so that's why I put it in the schedule. So it's just a breakdown by the year we issued the long-term debt, the principal outstanding on each issuance, the interest outstanding on each issuance, and the total, and it's broken down into each fund, and then when the payoff year is for each of those serial bonds. The payoff year is important. For instance, we had some payoff in 2024 and 2023 and 2024 that allowed us to build a firehouse where we would take on more debt in the year 2025. So when we were looking at this 10 years ago, okay, when can we build the firehouse? 2025 is the year. So, we do all the preliminary work before that, and then the cost would come on in that year. And then we would spread out the payments for that firehouse over the period of probable usefulness. So for instance, if a firehouse is, I think this one's 30 years, we're able to spread the cost out over 30 years for, if we so choose, for this type of construction.
And that 30 years is calculated from the year
Right.
that the bond is
Right.
issued? Not
Yes.
from the year that the building
It's
opens?
the year that the bond is issued. So so we're able to issue short-term debt, and we would issue the short-term debt until we're done with construction. So when we're done and we know what the final cost is, generally you roll that into a long-term debt, a serial bond, and then that's when those years kick in. So, but that's weighted in with whatever else you're issuing debt for that year. For instance, it could be a road, it could be a pump station, and we'll get to that. Those all have different periods of probable usefulness, and then they're lumped together into one bond. And then they use a weighted average maturity to calculate it. So anyway, this is the overall of how much debt we have. And we put into the budget each year the principal and interest payments that are applicable for each year.
So in terms, that's an interesting statement you made about kind of planning several years, and in that case, a decade ahead for kind of larger projects. So if I'm looking at the years on this now, I see a lot of things around 2039 and 2040, one of which is, $15 million, more than $15 million. So in terms of planning for things, should that kind of be the next horizon where we might, depending on the overall financial picture, you can't predict what's going to be like that far in advance, but that might be a time if we have a significant project.
Perhaps, but you'll see, like right now, we'll have an issuance for 2025 that will bring on much more debt. So you'll see in the next slide where I will show you what I plan to issue this year and what our total authorizations are. So that might be today if we issued no more debt from here until 2040, but we will be, because that's how we end up paying for our large projects.
And the 2018 general fund issuance, the 12 million, a lot of that's the highway garage, right?
That is
I think
correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. So we had short-term debt up until that point, and then there was actually there was a piece was issued earlier too. So, and then that was paid off, but a larger chunk of the authorization was issued in short-term notes and then long-term in
Yeah, that's what I
2018.
recall. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Next slide, Ben. Okay. So this is what goes into all of our financial information that we put out there, whether it's the audited financial statements or our required disclosures with SEC. They want to know how much we have authorized and how much we have unissued. And then also they always like to know what we plan to issue. So we're coming up on a issuance, we've been discussing this for the last year, that we need to now come back, and we've fronted most of the money for these projects. Now we need to actually issue the debt for it. I've been avoiding issuing debt because of the high interest rates. So as much as we can, we've been fronting the money, and now very shortly we will be issuing some of the money that all this work we've been doing since 2021, because that was the last time we went out to issue debt. And we locked in at a very good rate at that time. So one of the things that will be coming up and is we have 4.4 million of monies that we authorized in 2020 for water system improvements. And basically it was dam engineering, Mount Beacon, Cargill, and Melzinga dams, and construction for Mount Beacon. This also includes the monies for the meter upgrade that we are currently underway with. If there is anything like that we don't spend all the money, I won't issue it. We'll just rescind it. So we issue only up to what we spent, and then if there's any amount left over, we don't continue to issue. We'll take that authorization back. The next one we plan to issue is City Hall improvements, and those are, there's two of them. One was in 20 and one was in 21, and that accounts for the steps that we're currently working on, the painting of this building, the City Hall HVAC chiller, the roof, and the parking lot. There's also some minor security upgrades in there as well. The next one is sewer system improvements for 4.8 million, and that is the primary settling tanks, West Main Street pump station, force main replacement, the station replacement, and Fishkill Ave from Delavan to Hannah Lane. Then the fifth one, I think needs no introduction, is our firehouse for 10 million. So all in all, this will be our short-term issuance. They're telling me that I can expect interest rates of 3.25. So I've calculated this for the budget, and this is going in the ban in the short-term section for interest payments when we go to issue. If we can issue before Thanksgiving, we'll be issuing in 2024. If we can't, it'll go into January of 2025. We usually don't issue debt in December, as most places are closing their portfolios, and we would have more bidders in January. Workers' comp, I didn't discuss. It's a smaller item on our list, and I don't have a slide for it, but we are in a plan with Dutchess County with shared services with several other municipalities in Dutchess County. And again, It's an actuarial computation that is provided to us from the plan, and they tell us what our portion is, and it's based on our current reported salaries. The last one that Chris had briefly touched upon was our liability insurance. We are seeing increases of about 10%, and it is based on increasing rates, which I'm sure you're seeing in your own personal coverages for homeowners and vehicles. There's an increase in a lot of our buildings. There's an increase in value. So it's a percentage on an increase in value. And so we are estimating 10%. We will look into this year. We have not shopped in a while. We got a really good deal with NYMER. We're very happy with them for the most part. We do have, a lot of claims. We put through, when someone hits a light pole and any vehicle damage or anything that comes up. But this is an industry trend, really, more so than just Beacon specific.
And Beacon is on the right trend. So over the last 5 years, our claims have started to go down. We're trying to take steps to ensure that it goes down further. For instance, where we see issues where there might be a trip and fall hazard, we try to get on that more quickly. We do regular inspections of our facilities to make sure that they're safe. We've had some large claims, and so far we've been successful in many of them, but they do take money to defend. It's like your car insurance. If you have a number of tickets or you have a number of accidents, well, for us, having a number of claims has also raised the price of our insurance.
But it could be something that we could shop out, do an RFP for.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. That's the total presentation. Did you want me to go through anything from the email that was sent? I have it. Nope.
Can you give voice, just because it's a not small item on our budget, just the interfund revenue between water and sewer, just a bit
Sure.
how that works and what it's
Yes.
for?
That is an overhead calculation. So a lot of the general fund picks up many of the expenses that are pertinent to water and sewer. For instance, one of the major things is the finance staff, which is located all within the general fund, does all the water and sewer billing, revenue, and collection, including billing our haulers. So in order to charge the appropriate fund, we do an overhead allocation of my time, my staff's time, including Chris's time, anything that's not charged directly there. And then we charge back to the fund, so it's an expense in the water and sewer fund and a revenue in the general fund. So that's also building costs, because since the people who are working for water and sewer, for administratively anyway, are in this building, there's some building costs that are allocated back to water and sewer. IT costs,
Legal.
printing, what's
Legal,
that?
insurance.
Legal is charged directly there, but insurance is allocated through the overhead allocation. There is in mechanics, the water department particularly has more vehicles, and all the mechanics are in the highway department in the general fund, so that's charged back. That's about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think any other questions that come up that pertain to this, I can answer as we go through everybody else's too.
So, and then what we had hoped to do tonight is go through 3 of the 6 major asset departments that constitute the biggest part of the budget. We have with us Mickey Manzi from Highway, Ed Balicki from Water, and Dave Tavernier from the wastewater treatment plant. We're going to go through, each of you has the presentation, they're in the packets. We've also uploaded excerpts so that people can easily find the pieces of the budget without going through all of it. And so we would invite Mickey up to come and talk about some of the things that they're doing year over year, and there you go.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Administrator White, public. My name is Michael Manzi. For those of you that don't know me, I am the Highway Superintendent here in the city. I want to take the time first. Obviously, everybody's kind of seen some of the work that's gone around town with all the milling and paving. My staff, the Water Department staff, have worked vigorously the last 2.5, 3 weeks, getting the roads prepped. Obviously, we go through the milling process first, and then we go through and pave everything. So it takes a lot of coordination, a lot of time, a lot of effort on everybody's part. So I'd like to thank everybody for that. While I'm on that real quick, I just want to clarify a couple things as far as the milling and paving. A couple questions I get with the milling and paving. Why do we mill and wait so long before we pave? Well, the answer to that is we sub out everything that we do as far as the milling end of it. What we do when we mill, our trucks, our staff haul everything, but we have a mill come in as a subcontractor. With that, we have another contractor that comes in and paves. So we typically go through all the milling first, get everything set up, milled, and then we go through and kind of clarify and clean up all the structures and the final preparation before the paving comes in. Then we get the paver come in, and we kind of coordinate, shut down roads, which I know is an inconvenience, but it's a short inconvenience for a few weeks to make our roads nice and kind of passable for all the residents and taxpayers. Another thing that came to my attention, I just want to kind of clarify and speak about is, and I can understand some of the frustration, hey, you guys just paved this road a year ago or 2 years ago. Why are we ripping it up and you know, Central Hudson comes in and tears it up and my tax dollars are going to paying for this? I just want to clarify, the roads, Central Hudson came in and had to upgrade their gas systems, their gas mains, went from metal to plastic. The agreement was, and the conversations that we had and will be having, is they pay us to reestablish our roads. No cost to the taxpayers. So we benefit because even if it's a little bit of an older road, 2 or 3 years, we mill and pave that on their cost, we gain another 10 or 15 years on that road. So we kind of benefit from that. But these are a couple things that I've been hearing in conversation in town, so I just want to kind of clarify that. But again, first and foremost, I definitely want to thank all my staff, all the Water Department staff who've worked very hard on this. So in my packet here,
Ben, can you put up the packet, please, now?
it kind of goes through, and I think most of you have seen this before for the most part. I have 22 staff, including myself, and then 1 part-time employee. In that, we have 3 mechanics, 1 cleaner who handles all the cleaning and situations here at the City Hall. So when you start looking at that in the Park Department, there's not a lot on the highway itself. But when you start looking at what we've done and what we've gotten accomplished, we've gotten quite a bit accomplished for the size of our staffing. One of the highlights, obviously, if it's not the biggest, it's one of the biggest projects, is the one going across the street, is the firehouse. We had continued support through our department. It says in here basically some of the stuff we've done. Prior to the demolition of the building, we went in, the staff went in, we kind of scrapped some of the metal. We brought it to the scrapyard. We turned checks into Susan. So that saved on labor, having the contractor come in and gutting the building. On top of, we were able to scrap the metal and get some revenue out of that. We did some test holes in the parking lot prior to construction, which instead of having a contractor do, it was definitely cost effective to have us do it, helped out that way. A couple situations where we had to remove some material from the parking lot.
Quickly.
Pretty quickly. So it was kind of like, hey, can you get some guys here tomorrow morning? We had 6 trucks, I believe, running, Chris, right?
Yeah.
6 or 7 trucks, and it was just nonstop all day.
We had run out of room on the site.
So we've really, the guys have really stepped up, and I've said this before in these meetings, we are the go-to department. I like to think of us as the go-to department. Any odds and ends, it's kind of, hey, the highway will take care of it. But again, Ed's sitting here from the water department. It's a collaboration between both departments. The guys really work well together, so.
Do you want me to say what it's really called? The honey-do list.
Yeah, the honey-do list.
The honey-do list.
Yeah, well,
And like I said, it explains a little bit more in there, some of the other stuff we do. I'm sure I'm forgetting some of the stuff.
Well, most recently, Mickey saved us, the highway staff saved us over $20,000 by them paving in front of the firehouse rather than the contractor doing that. And that's been all along. I have to say, like, we could not have accomplished this firehouse project without the support of Highway Department, Water Department, Finance, the fire chief and his people, and Building Department. This has cumulatively been probably some thousands of staff hours if you add up everything that was done. When we had to find an emergency parking lot because of the litigation with the church, it was Mickey's staff that quickly turned an old lot into a parking lot and then maintained it. So to have that capacity in-house was invaluable, and I don't know how we would have done this without that.
We have the firehouse, while it was under construction, we actually had the firemen in a construction trailer at the highway garage and 2 pieces of apparatus stored at the highway garage. So, I mean, collaboratively, everybody works well together, all the department heads, I mean, everybody they're team players, so we do what we have to do to get it done. The next thing, obviously, I don't know if anybody's taken a ride down, is the transfer station. That's another thing that Chris is very proud of, and as a department, I think we're very proud of, too. For a long time, it was unkept, overtaken by birds, broken windows, plywood. So we took the initiative and we got things together, changed all the windows out. While we were doing that, we pressure washed everything, grinded everything down, painted all the window frames, painted all the doors to match, even replaced the K that was on the wall that was missing.
The special K.
The special.
It looks really great. It looks like a whole new building.
Yeah, I mean, we still have some more work to do.
We're renting it for weddings if you would.
We actually ended up, we outsourced and had the inside cleaned out, the upstairs anyway, where the worst of the mess was.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
It was pretty bad. So, I mean, it's come a long way. Like I say, we still have some more work to do there, but it's habitable now. So, like I said, that was about a month and a half in the making as far as getting the work done. Guys worked off an 80-foot lift and kind of got everything buttoned up, sealed up so it's weather tight. And through the milling and paving, we're going to end up paving the main part of the outside. So that'll kind of, all around the scale and everything will be nice new blacktop, so that'll really spruce it up nice.
Mickey, at the incinerator building that you're rehabbing, are we getting it up to code, or are we just, kind of getting it so that we can do, it looks like we're talking about storage. We're just using
It's definitely potential storage. I'd have to have the building department come in to see if there is code issues with anything in there. It was really just getting it weather tight, bird tight, and just kind of cleaned up, so at least we have some clean palette to work with.
Okay, thanks.
The feeders into the incinerator are still there, right? It's an interesting building to go in. It was the first time I'd been upstairs in the last couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, the birds are pretty angry. You can ask Dave when he comes up.
I didn't go to the basement level.
They all moved over to the wastewater treatment plant.
They had to go to the car wash daily.
Yeah.
One of the other things we did, again, as a team, was the renovation of there's a room down the wastewater treatment plant. It's kind of like an old lab. Maybe Dave can explain a little bit more what the room was, but there was like a lab-type desktop in there, an old sink, and a rundown bathroom that was kind of connected to it. So we gutted the whole room, all new tile floor, and kind of made it a area where the guys can feel proud to hang their hat and kind of, hey, I got someplace to call our own. We put lockers in there, drop ceiling, LED lights, so we really spruced up and cleaned that up as well.
Which saved us significantly. I believe that we originally,
I think we had put it in for 150 or 200, and you did it for less than half of that.
I feel like it was 240.
Yeah.
Was originally the estimate to do that, and I think it was $20,000.
Yeah.
Plus staff time.
It was just materials.
Just materials.
Yeah, there's a little bit of, there was labor obviously during the day, and there's a couple days of overtime.
So they're saving us, I mean, that's one large thing, but Mickey's staff has been in all of our buildings. If you've seen them recently, they've been sprucing up everything for minimal costs.
And they're going to do the same. We have a similar situation with our police locker room. It's sorely in need of an upgrade. And we had estimates that if we did it by bidding it, we would get a much higher price. Again, Mickey's crews are going to go in and do that this winter. And again, we don't have to make a profit. We don't have to pay for, all the mobilization and stuff. We're right here. So they do save us a lot of money, and the quality of the workmanship is the finest around.
And above and beyond this packet as well, a couple other things we've done. Obviously, above and beyond, we're going to do roughly 6,000 ton of blacktop this year. Along with some of that comes rebuilding catch basins. We've rebuilt over 100 catch basins. If you see a sinkhole near a catch basin, typically it's a block is kind of broke down and there's just eroded. So we go through and we check those. As we're cleaning catch basins, we've cleaned over 600 year to date. We send a big sweeper out. They suck all the silt, all the water, leaves, anything, old debris, clean all that stuff up. So that's a couple things that we do as well. That was 2 guys pretty much a good part of the spring and into the summer. So, again, I just like to point that out because when you start looking at the staffing that we have and what we get done quite a bit for the numbers that we have. So it's something for us to be proud of. On the last page are a couple of my major item changes that were proposed for 2025. And there's nothing, to my looking at it, there was nothing other than an increase, nothing significant. There's some equipment as far as some new mowers that we're looking to get. So obviously the mowers, depending on the hours, depending on where you get with repairs, we looked to upgrade and change those mowers out. So it's been a while since we've gotten a couple new mowers. So obviously that's the first thing under equipment that is into the budget this year. And then you have maintenance of equipment. Again, a small increase there. Some of the stuff that falls under that I don't know if we overlooked, if it was an oversight, some of the inspections at the highway garage, the fuel pump, the fire system, that type stuff.
He means overlooked in years past.
Yes.
So
we're on track with all that, so that was part of that increase there for the inspections and getting everything up to date. Janitorial services, again, it kind of explains a little bit in there. Most of that reflects on the new proposed bathrooms down South Avenue Park there. So with that, obviously, we're going to have additional cleaning. Going back a couple of years ago, we opened up the Green Street bathrooms and the Memorial Park bathrooms, and we outsourced the cleaning for that. So now the additional increase is going to be, and I'm sure some of you noticed, the Welcome Center, that bathroom's open to the public now during the day. So we did additional cleaning on that, and then obviously the proposed new bathrooms at South Avenue Park. So that'll be additional cleaning. So that was the increase there.
And we're looking to install that next May. We pushed back the rehabilitation of the tennis court and basketball court, the earthwork, and the installation till next spring. So the bids for the earthwork should go out in early January. So we're queued up to go.
Is the earthwork the retaining walls?
Yes, yeah, exactly. We're taking failing retaining walls out and then creating a more sustainable slope, just so we don't have a... so there's quite a bit of earthwork down there, and that will proceed next spring.
And then just the last picture on the bottom is just a little revamp of Henry Street. We ripped out the old hedgerow there that was kind of overgrown. It's kind of a catcher's mitt for trash and leaves and that type of stuff. So we removed those, regraded everything off, and we installed some new trees there. Again, we try to do some plantings, try to fill in the voids on Main Street the best we can. Wherever we can add a tree, we try to do it.
And I would just say, we'd be here all night listing all the things that Mickey's department has done. We were recently named one of the 3 most pristine main streets in New York State, and that's because Mickey has been putting so much resource into that, with changing out garbage cans, putting in new street trees, making sure the streets are cleaned. We've done work down at the riverfront. If you see the Dog Leg Park, it's all cleaned up. There's a new picnic bench down there. There's beautiful new benches. There's new trees. So we're looking at every part of our public properties. Again, you'll see new street trees going in this fall on Main Street to replace the ones that had died. All of that never kind of makes it anywhere, but it's good to have at least once a year where we say, yeah, they're doing an amazing job. And again, coordinating other smaller contractors takes a lot of time too. Mickey really oversaw the ADA ramps coming in. We're making a critical junction between the Greenway Trail and East Main Street. Mickey's overseeing those as well.
Yeah, this year we did, I believe, 32 or 33 ADA ramps.
I think we got to 34 because we added that one.
And last year was 34 as well. So any roads that we do with milling, any roads that we mill and pave that are under chips, that we're required to put the ADA ramps in, so we get the ramps put in prior to. And that's another thing. A lot of people say, why do we wait so late in the year to mill and pave? There's a lot, like Chris was just saying, there's a lot of coordination. I don't know what my budget is until CHIPS comes out with their new updated reimbursements and funds. So once that comes out, then we got to put the ADA ramps out. We got to see where that comes in as the bids come in. And then from there, I kind of see what budget I have as far as what I can get done on streets.
And it's also good not to do it in August when it's 98 degrees out.
The
This is a
blacktop
much
pool's
better-
much faster,
yeah.
and we're able to open them up a lot sooner.
That's right.
And just to touch on what Chris was saying as far as Main Street, all the decorative poles this year were completed. We started Main Street in I believe, the fall of last year, but we got all of Main Street, all the decorative lamps are painted on Main Street. All the decorative ones along 9D are painted. We went down Hudson Avenue, and
City
went up
Hall.
in so pretty much all the painted black light poles are all cleaned up and
Yeah.
Can you give voice to I see the EV charging stations. We expect an increase next year. I don't know if that's because we're putting in new ones or how that works.
Do you mean the revenue?
Yes, the revenue, sorry, thank you.
So that's me. We are seeing increased in reimbursements from ChargePoint. So because the more that we install around the city, we get a percentage of that back to us. Some goes out in our electricity expense, and we're able to collect some on the revenue side. So as we install more EV stations, the more people are using them, the more money we end up receiving.
And we just got grants to install more EV charge stations, so at least 6 will be coming online if everything goes well next year. So we have 4 across the street at the firehouse that are going to be opening shortly. We're looking to put 2 over at the West Center Street Recreation Center because we have now 2 electric vehicles there, and then they can be co-used by the public. And then we're looking at other places, like maybe another charger bank at City Hall. So we've been getting grants for those through Fay Leone and the Clean Energy Community Grants. And Mickey's, again, supported that. I think your guys did a lot of the base installation to save us money on the installation of the ones we did on Van Nydek and Cross Street.
yeah, I think to date, we've done the 4 that were in town we installed
Yes.
in-house.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So. No, we've had a good run. We're getting a lot done. I know that it's been disruptive and some people are not happy about that, but it's almost over. We'll be done paving this week. The firehouse is 2 weeks from being done. And again, even Fishkill Teller will be done next late spring. And even on Fishkill Teller Avenue, Mickey worked overtime just to try to get the utility poles moved. We had conflicts with multiple poles, and he worked with Verizon, Central Hudson, and the other entities that had cable on those, and has basically troubleshot all of these projects to keep them moving along. The amount of work going behind the scenes is incredible right now.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
again, thank you to my
Thanks.
staff. I want to take that opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank you,
you
Ed.
have a good staff. And thank you to you, Mickey.
Thanks, Mickey.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next presenter is going to be Ed Balicki, our Superintendent of Water and Sewers. So Ed kind of has 2 roles. He does our drinking water system, and then he also does the collection system for the wastewater treatment plant. He doesn't now do the wastewater treatment plant, so Dave will address that. And you have his excerpts in the packet now. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah, and Ed is also, his guys have helped with the hydrant relocation at the firehouse, with doing the hookups for the water, both at the visitor station and at the firehouse. So your guys are usually in the mix with Mickey's crews.
Yeah, we do our best to work hand in hand. One of the advantages that we have, honestly, is that we have a vac truck, which helps limit digging area. We don't need the big excavator or backhoe. When we were talking about the EV stations, we would go out with the vac truck and back her out the area to then allow the Davey and Sean to then pour the concrete and stuff like that. So it's good coordination. All of my staff, or most of my staff, all assist the highway with snow plowing every winter, sidewalk clearing here of City Hall. Most recently, as it was said, we've been out with the highway department doing milling and paving. We do weeks ahead of time we go ahead and try to identify structures. We use the term structures, which is the manhole frames and the water valves that need to be addressed that are offset. We clean out all the water valves, make sure we have access to the operating nut and the valve. Any of the antiquated manhole frames, like ones that have holes that are for venting, which are an I&I source, we change those out to a nice sealed lid. Sometimes we have to put lockdown lids on. I&I. Infiltration and inflow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There you go.
So, thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
So,
Just putting it in English.
Thank you. So, like I said, as been covered earlier, thank you to Mickey. We do a lot of, we have our own work that we do on top of it. We're responsible for the 3 reservoirs, Cargill, Melzinga, and Mount Beacon, roughly 650 fire hydrants, all the sanitary sewer mains, the 4 pump stations, along with 2 water booster stations as well. There's 12 staff that do that throughout the year, and this year we had 2 part-time seasonal employees as well. I want to just take a quick moment. I know it's not in here. To one of my part-time seasonal employees went off to the Marines this year, so I wish him the best and congratulate him and thank him for his service.
And what's his name, Ed?
Sam Escalaris.
Okay. Good luck, Sam.
On top of that, too, we also do probably all of our facility maintenance, lawn mowing, any fence repair that needs to be done, as much building repair as we can. We do all of our own painting as well. We do coordinate with Davey sometimes and Sean for some on-site additional help, especially with the bucket truck. They help us out a lot as well.
And you clean the pool every year.
Yes.
Don't forget about that.
Yes, we are. Since I believe 2015, maybe 14, somewhere in there, we became the official opening of the pool, the Beacon, at the settlement camp.
And they test it to make sure it works. Yes, they do.
And then also one of our staff is also the licensed pool operator on site, so he maintains the licensure for that. This year, as I was here just like 2 weeks ago, our biggest incentive, our biggest project this year was the lead service line inventory. I certified the inventory just this past week and submitted that to the EPA, Dutchess County, and New York State Department of Health. Just real briefly, there is it is posted on the website. It's under the water and sewer page under resources. We are going to put a fresh tab on the main page, but to get to the deadline of October 16th, we just wanted to get it on the website as quickly as we could. That'll be also continuing next few years until we get to 100% identification of all the service lines. And then, as many of you know, we were implementing the water meter upgrade program, which is predominantly the MXU, which is how the water meters communicate and talk. Right now we have a fixed-base drive-by system that only captures 90 days. Like, we only get a read every 90 days. The newer system will allow continuous reads, updated reads. As we get closer to the end, more residents will be able to create a customer portal where you'll be able to monitor your usage regularly. It just, instead of just seeing that glimpse at the 90 days. Also, as Chris stated, we worked on the Fishkill Avenue project heavily this year as well, doing a lot of utility locations, mark outs, remarking out, helping sometimes we couldn't actually find what we were actually looking for, and finding those utilities, hydrant relocations.
Moving hydrants.
Yep,
yeah.
moving hydrants. And then we also have our West Main Street Pump Station and Force Main project that's going on down here on Beekman Street and River. And next year, we'll be looking at doing the Melzinger Reservoir Rehab Project, which is a compliance to bring the dam up to, the spillway up to safety standards, and also constructing a new water storage tank at Pocket Road.
And for those two projects, were those capital plan?
Yeah, they're both in the capital program.
Okay.
Melzinga, I think,
looks
we
like it
added
was
$1 million
yeah.
this year. It's at 3.9. The tank, I think we have at 1 million, and then we're negotiating, is it 1.5? 1.5.
Okay.
So like this year was the year of road projects and very visible stuff. Next year, we're moving into the things that you don't see. Melzinga, which is down in the town of Fishkill. Dave will talk a little bit about the dewatering project that we're going to be doing. You won't see it, but it's a major change, and it's a big investment for the city. So we're going to be moving into more hard infrastructure that you don't really see.
Okay.
Due to site limitations with our current pocket tank, or we call it, internally we call it the Mount Beacon tank, due to site limitations, we had to negotiate an easement with New York State Parks for land. We've done the process here. We're just waiting for New York State Parks to finish the process.
Okay, so that's the delay that you refer to in the...
Yes. Yeah, it was...
Okay.
The site limitations because we have the Central Hudson has an aerial easement over the property, so we can't really construct underneath the aerial easement. So to build the proper size tank, we kind of had to move it around the property, and luckily New York State was right next door to us, and they've agreed because it's on really unused land, and they don't ever foresee a purpose to it.
Okay. Is it okay to go to questions?
You want to do your two changes, Ed, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the big changes, again, we've seen a massive increase in chemical costs again through the year. It's predominantly been, it's been with the chlorine that we use for disinfecting the drinking water. And then as we've continued, in previous years, we've had significant capital costs to the sanitary sewer to correct infiltration and inflow, also I&I. So as to continue that process, and we keep removing it from that, we've continued to look through at our sanitary sewers. One of the pictures you see in your presentation is actually a capture from our sewer crawler camera, where we go out and we investigate sewers. Well, one of the things we found was some of the older manholes that are made from brick. They're porous, and every time it rains, they're almost like a sieve with water coming into it. So there's trenchless technologies that are available to us that they do grout injection, and then they seal the inside as pictured in the presentation.
And the reason stopping that I&I is important is because it inundates the plant. Some of you remember we had one storm where our design flow is 6 million, and we were at 18 million one day at the wastewater treatment plant. Now we can only do so many of those before we lose our biology and inundate the plant physically.
We also get fined.
Yes.
And the other thing as well is when we have a rain event, and if the higher the water table stays, you might not notice it anymore because the storm drains and everything have receded. But if you pop a manhole, you still see it seeping through. Right? As long as the water table stays high and the bricks get saturated, it keeps seeping. So we've identified areas that we'd like to try and start rehabilitating those manholes.
I'm familiar
Thanks.
with that from my basement. Yeah.
Thanks, Amber. You had questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about the lead service line inventory, and if you don't know off the top of the head, it's okay to get back to me. I was just wondering roughly what percentage completed would you say that is?
We're over 50% at this point. So
Okay.
the way it breaks down is you have to identify both sides of the service line using your external valve as like the divider. So even if we only have one side, it's still not considered complete. So we have a greater number of known one side or the other than we do of both. So as part of the meter program is that the contractor is also identifying the internal. So it will allow us, as we keep moving along, if we know like an entire street is copper and we have a percentage of the outside, we'll be able to do analysis to determine and say, oh, this is copper, right, along with some sampling. So we're at roughly 50% now.
Okay. And if we do find lead service lines, are the property owners notified of that?
Yeah, so like, there's 2 mailers that will be going out shortly. For the people, right now, we haven't identified any lead. We found 7 galvanized, and based on when the galvanized, we don't really know when the galvanized was manufactured, but it could have been manufactured with lead. So those residents will be notified in a very distinct letter that your property has been identified as having a galvanized service line. And then the unknowns also get a letter just saying your property is unknown, with ways of asking to have it verified.
Okay, thank you. And then for
And and also briefly, the templates that are, the letters that we'll be using, they're provided by the state, so it's like a kind of
Yes.
uniform template.
Yeah, I know a lot of this is kind of run by the state, and of course, there's nowhere near enough money that they've budgeted for remediation, so kind of why I was asking. And then lastly, on the water meter project, it looks like it's scheduled to be completed January 2025, so that's great. And then once it's completed, do residents sign up for that portal, or is that a rolling?
One of the first test portals,
Okay.
is a lot of that's happening in the background, because it was coordination between our Munis program, what we have, and then with Census Analytics, the company, so we have this like clean transfer of information back and forth.
Munis would be the billing program.
Yes.
Got it.
It's the accounting program. So we're still working out a lot of the things that we have to do, a lot of testing and making sure everything is running properly. And then we have to do some training for our staff.
Awesome. Thank you. Those were the questions. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Can I just ask one follow-up question to Amber's? Because this is a question I got from the public, when the water meter replacement crew goes into a home and they're identifying the material that the pipe is made of, are they doing that by sight? Are they taking a sample of the material? Are they taking photographs?
Typically it's by sight.
Sight.
Yeah, if it's lead, it's going to look like very gray in color,
Yeah.
very simple gray in color. Copper is, will have like an old penny look to it.
But they
And
won't be taking photographs
They do
inside
take
the-
photographs
they do,
of it.
okay.
Yeah, it's part of their quality control.
Got it.
They take a picture of the meter, they take a picture of the new MXU, they take a picture of the pipe material. It's all uploaded through VEPO, and we get copies of their service reports.
Got it.
And in the presentation I gave 2 weeks ago regarding the service line, I had that one spreadsheet that is downloaded from VEPO, and one of the columns is a link to their online site, which holds the. I can't access it that direct way because of some of our safety protocols we have with our cyber, but it is all housed, all the pictures. It's easier for us to actually get the PDF printouts of their inspections.
Okay. Thank you.
Curious about the manhole cover project. Do you have an estimate of how much infiltration is associated with those manholes?
It varies based on really the seepage of it. But like as said before, we've seen like massive spikes of flow, and like one of the areas that we were looking at, when we popped the manhole, it's just constant like trickles running, right? So over a couple thousand it might not be every manhole, but it's spread across. It's like death by 1,000 cuts or death by 1,000 pinpricks. It just keeps running and running and running.
Yeah, just curious of like other sources that you think lead to that increased increased impact on the plant besides the manholes that you're looking at too for like feasible fixes.
Well, one of the things we did earlier this year was we enacted a change in our law for residents to have sump pumps, right? So if you have
Right.
a sump pump and the building department is doing it, now that we have teeth to that law, right? That's because the law has always been there that you can't have a sump pump connected to our sanitary sewer, but now we have, if it is found, you have to disconnect it and you have to have proof that you disconnected it. So we've added that to help reduce any I&I, and Bruce and Corey and Scott, they've been doing a fantastic job on their inspections finding them.
And some of the costs that we talked about with debt previously, you've done a lot of work as a city since at least 2010 on remediating this I&I issue. It's not unique to the city. In fact, the systems used to be designed to combine your sanitary and storm overflow, so that when you had a lot of water, there was just kind of to make it very simple, you had like an escape pipe at the top so that it had an overflow, and it would just combine. Some of the infrastructure, like we're going to be rebuilding a manhole at Teller, Fishkill, and Maine, unrelated to that project, but the manhole itself is collapsing. Some of those were built over 100 years ago. Fortunately, there are technologies now for us coating those to basically seal them without doing too much. But that one has to be actually, I think, rebuilt,
A
right?
part of the external of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the newer trenchless technologies, we've done it through our sanitary sewer pipes. One is like where they inject the epoxy coated sleeve and it recoats. You can do that with the manholes, or they can actually go in and spray line it with this very similar material.
And then Ed's guys found one neighborhood where the stormwater was going right into a pump station. So we're working now. Yeah, it's not something you can fix overnight, but we're working through the fix on it so that they have to separate it out. And again, thank you for all the support on the capital projects.
Yeah.
Well, no problem.
A question about refuse removal. I see that's a quite significant line item in your budget.
That's either Mickey or David.
I think that's the sewer budget. Is it G?
It is G.
Yep, that would be Dave, coming up.
I'm G.
Oh, so
A120.
that doesn't count. That's
No.
with
That's the sludge
I'm
cake.
G8120, Dave's G8130.
great. Thank you.
I just start calling you numbers.
Ed gets a gold star.
No, there you go.
Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ed.
And then the other piece of the sewer
Yep.
budget
Thank you, Ed.
is the wastewater treatment plant. And we have David Tavernier, who is our superintendent, our chief operator down there, essentially. And everything that's collected, they have to treat before it can be released into the environment. And that's a big responsibility for us.
Hello, council members, mayor. So I was trying to think about how to explain or illustrate what we do down there, because you could say wastewater treatment, and I thought we actually mine water. Water is the most precious resource. And so what we do by our treatment methods is that we basically take 10 million gallons a month and of water and make it reach about a 98 to 99% cleanliness, and then release it into the Hudson River. And then 500 tons of the solids are then sent to a landfill through our dry cake as dewatering. So what is our driver? Well, the protection of human health is the number one driver, and obviously the preservation of the environment.
And Dave, I think that was 100.
What was that?
Is it 10 or 100 per month?
10 million, pardon me, thank you for
It's
doing that.
100 million
It's
a month.
100 million.
Yes.
Yes, 100 million gallons.
So it's about 3 million gallons a day, and then
yeah,
we have
thank you.
spikes.
You're the numbers guy.
Yes.
Appreciate that. So even a greater optic, right, perspective. And so we also create revenue for the city because there's haulers that bring in leachate, septic, and other liquid waste, and so we're able to process those. And then that generates a revenue for the city. So we have currently a staff of 10. Okay, we have one chief operator, one senior operator. We have 3 wastewater treatment operators, 1 senior wastewater treatment mechanic, 4 wastewater treatment maintenance mechanics, and there's 1 vacant slot currently for a maintenance helper. So in the 2025 budget, there's no proposal for increases or decreases in that budgeted staff. So let's talk about 2024 projects and initiatives. We'll start with the primary settling tanks. Well, that's being completed, even though this project started in 2021, but supply chain difficulties, have us here 3 years later. But these are 3 sets of double tanks that serve as the primary settling tanks in our treatment process. And now what was done through this project? Well, All the internal hardware was replaced. The concrete on the tanks was repaired and it was sealed. So it's substantially completed now. It just has a few minor punch list items that are being fixed over the next month. So this is about, they treat about a volume of 320,000 gallons, and they're now fully back in service. So another highlight, which is a very special one, it was already touched on, the staff locker room and restroom upgrades. I want to go straight to, to thank the people that worked on that. And so these are Mickey Manzi, Dave Way, Sean DeToro, Sandro Cabrera, and Steve Garrison. So what they did there was remarkable, really. They planned, they crafted, and their attention to detail, even the smallest things, they captured all of that. They went beyond. They didn't just do a basic reno, they really made it feel like it was for a special group of people, which our crew are. So thank you, Mickey and the crew. I think it was already mentioned, the savings that occurred because of this, it was tremendous. It's about 100,000, more or less, or more? More than that? Yeah,
I think it was more than that.
Very good. But as you know, another issue that we have, not only in this city, but in every city, is the rising costs of everything. So the focus for us this year has been in mitigating those rising costs. And there's two ways two focuses that we've kind of put in front of us as goals. The first one is to reduce the costs of chemicals. So we've developed strategies to reduce the amount of chemicals we use. One example is there's the dewatering area, and we used to rely heavily on a chemical oxidant to reduce the amount of noxious gas generation. So staff was able to install an exhaust fan, and therefore we were able to cut the use of that oxidizing chemical by half. So that was a very great reduction in cost. And then the second one is that we are starting to bring in-house repairs that we normally outsource to contractors that charge a very high cost. Now they're even charging you just to come on site, because there's such demand for their services. So one of the initiatives that we've done is we explore the possibility of doing that when we bring a contractor to service a piece of equipment, and then we ask ourselves the question, can we do it in-house? What do we need? So in that line of thought, in 2024, two things happened. One of them is that we bought a professional toolbox in 2024, and actually in 2023 we hired a skilled senior mechanic. So when you put those two things together, then we have what we need to do those repairs in-house. And so we've been saving thousands of dollars this year, and we will continue to do so in the future years. So we always ask ourselves, is it safe to do it in-house, and is it more economical? And we've found that the answer is yes. So that's two ways we've mitigated the rising costs. Let's move on to 2025 projects and initiatives. Taking center stage is a dewatering system replacement. As discussed during the council's capital program discussions, we have a very old belt press system that is in urgent need of replacement. So we work with Ty and Bond on the design and replacement of a system which incorporates two centrifuges that provide not only more efficient operation but resiliency. We will have redundancy with those systems. So this is a $5 million project that also will include upgrades to the existing dewatering building. And we're happy to say that this is currently out to bid, this project, and work should commence in the beginning of 2025, in the early part of 2025.
And Molly, this should also help reduce that waste disposal cost, because the sludge cake that we send out is largely water, and to the extent that we can remove water from it, we pay for less weight, because you pay by the ton for disposal.
Great, thank you.
Very good. So major item changes proposed for 2025. These are two that are reductions. One of them is in the repair of equipment. It went from $240,000 in 2024 to $160,000 in 2025. And again, the reason is that repairs that previously were done at a higher cost for contractors are now being handled by skilled staff inside the plant. So not only that, but we are maintaining our equipment through CMMS, which is a computerized maintenance management system. And so we keep track of when services are due, what type of oil is needed, for example, what type of grease. And so that allows us to maintain, to extend the life of all of our equipment at the plant. Very good. And then the second item of reduction is engineer costs. So in 2025, we propose to reduce this line from $70,000 to $50,000. What's the rationale behind that? Well, that we're actually hiring more specialized consultant engineers for our projects, and the dewatering system is an example of that. This was done by an outside design firm, Ty & Bond, and so the fees were captured inside the appropriate capital funding for the project as opposed to through operational funds. So the rest of that proposed budget, the $50,000, we should be able to encompass the smaller non-capital items for the year. Last but not least, the green team deserves a special thanks because they beautify our plants, our plant with the planting of sunflowers. And so there's a little picture there of their beautiful work. So we don't want them to go unnoticed. Very good. So I'm open for questions now.
So I just want to clarify too, the locker room renovation was originally costed out to be $240,000.
Oh, you remembered that. Good.
And I just looked up our end cost, which is just materials, because obviously our staff's paid through payroll, was $5,580. So
And a little overtime. We did pay a little.
did some overtime, but well worth
But
it.
I mean and you had people who cared what it looked like. I mean, they
So-
even shined. What was it? They did the brass over on
Right.
The original hardware, they took it and they polished it. So we have some vintage
Right.
specs there.
They really cared.
We actually, and this goes back to planning a couple of years ago, we knew we needed more staff. Dave Way couldn't do it all. So that's when we decided to create a position, maintenance carpenter, hired Sean DeToro, and they worked together to do all these projects. So we just knew we couldn't have the capabilities. It would be a cost savings, like, maybe the recreation center, the roof needed work, other things that we had to outsource. So we had made that decision a couple of years ago, and it's paying off.
One thing that isn't on this that you're going to see is we do have a leaking roof at the administration building, and John Russo is almost done with the bid that will be going out. So we're hoping to still do that roof job this year, if we can. We're going to be having bids come back on October 24th for the new dewatering system. On your agenda tonight is the construction inspection contract for Ty & Bond to oversee that, because they start that work immediately when the bids come in. So, yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between the work on the dewatering plant and the haulers fees that we bring in? That's a significant
Sure.
source of revenue, and just how improving the plant might also be a benefit for the hauler fees as well.
So when haulers bring their waste, again, we have to mine the water out of it, right? Like the illustration at the beginning, but then you have the resulting solids. The next dewatering technology, which is a centrifuge, spins at about 34,000 times the regular gravity. So now you have this force of separation that we don't have currently with a belt press, which is basically like a porous mesh where the water goes through and then it squeezes a little bit. So by bringing in that type of technology, the cake is drier. And when the cake is drier, then it impacts the fees that we pay for the solids to be hauled out of our plant and into landfills. So basically, we're saving money through that dewatering technology. And really, that's going to be one of the most expensive items in the future for any type of wastewater industry is the disposal of solids. So we're getting ahead of the curve by implementing this technology in our facility.
And Molly, when we designed it, we put 2 centrifuges so that there's resiliency. Right now, if the belt press breaks for any reason, we're down. We can't take haulers. So we've lost tens of thousands of dollars of potential revenue, even though we're doing really well on the haulers. I looked back on the numbers, and since in 2021, we renegotiated the contracts with all of the haulers and started raising the fees on a regular basis. Since we did that in 2021, 2022, and 2023, we netted more than $1.2 million in extra revenues. That money is being recycled right back into improvements. That's helping to pay for the primary settling tanks and for the dewatering. And again, it's a good investment for us because having that downtime doesn't help anybody. In some cases, we actually lost the capacity to even dewater our own internal waste from the city, and we had to ship it out at a very expensive cost. So this is about reliability. It's about making sure that revenue stream is not disrupted because something you only have one of it and it breaks. Now we have 2, and we'll have a much hardier system.
And hauler revenue accounts for 31% of the revenues in the sewer fund.
Anything additional on that line? No?
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the other percentage, and I don't think you know it offhand, I didn't see it. So 31% of the revenue, whether it's water or sewer, it's roughly the same. I'm sorry, for sewer is hauler. Percentage of non-Beacon residents revenue?
Non-Beacon residents
Yeah.
Contributing?
Yeah.
I don't, but I could get that pretty quick
Yeah.
for the next meeting.
Because that's our other 2
Yeah.
big components, right? We process water, we do water and sewer for portions of Fishkill and the correctional facility, and then we also do hauler. And those 2 both help sewer and water.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant out-of-town residents.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to get
that's
to.
one of the
Right,
things.
because we have out-of-town residents we directly bill, but we also obviously bill the correctional facility, but we also bill the town of Fishkill for, so we don't, that's multiple things.
Yeah.
But I could get you a breakdown on that. All of it subsidize our own residents.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Can I just ask a quick question about the revenue? Last year, I brought up the idea of maybe looking at the water bills or adjusting the water rates based on usage. We talked about how, if we had somebody that was using a lot of water, that we could maybe charge them a higher rate to incentivize using less.
I think that's a
and to
great idea.
reward- What's that?
I think that's a great idea. Because right now in the code, it's the more you use, the less you're charged.
Right.
So yes, we should
So-
change that.
So I would, before we get to
Oh,
that,
sorry.
I appreciate that. I guess I wouldn't know how to begin that conversation.
It's in the code right now, is the usage.
Right, but we wouldn't want to create, like, if I were to just come and say, here are the new rates,
Mm-hmm.
we have to calculate those and make sure they add up and cover our bills or potentially
Mm-hmm.
go higher. I wouldn't know how to present that as an agenda item for the council
Okay.
without doing the math, but I wouldn't want to
Right.
ask you to do that without talking to Chris. But
Right.
I think incentivizing
To
use
use
using
less.
less and having higher costs for big users would
I
be
think-
smart.
Well,
And I guess, Dan, maybe one approach would be not that we have to set the rate in the code, but do something more like we did with towing, where we say it will be set by such and such.
I mean, the one thing to be careful about this is, I understand the goal, and if it was all single-family homes, and you're like, okay, this person used twice as much, they shouldn't get a discount for that, the variance above what everybody else used. But you have a mix of things here. So some of the commercial properties are in master meters, and you could literally have, 100 apartments up at Edgewater on one meter, And to say that they would be charged actually could have an unanticipated consequence of raising rents. So I would just want to
Right.
figure it out. Like, it's
a rate
something we can
study.
look into, but I really want to be thoughtful about it.
Absolutely. So, but I think it's a good thing to look at.
Definitely, water conservation is something we have to do periodically, but we should, again, be looking at
Right.
how do you bring it down,
Right-
the
right
per
now we're-
capita use.
Right now, we're pretty buried with the meter upgrade, but we can definitely put that on the list of something that we would need to do a full study.
Yeah.
It wouldn't just be, our calculation of it.
That's why you never heard from me about it again, because I wouldn't know where to
No,
begin.
no, it's good. It's good to, thing to look at. But we couldn't do it just on our own either. So, and it would perhaps have a tiered effect within our accounting program that I'm not sure we could do, but we definitely is worth looking at.
Yeah, we're hearing some of the issues associated with it, so it's just not straightforward. You also have to be careful if you charge somebody more and they can't actually alter their usage, is that a good thing or not, right? So I think we'd have to just, do some homework to get there.
There's
but
definitely
it'd be
winners and
interesting.
losers, like,
Yeah.
restaurants use a lot of more water than a retail shop.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, interesting.
All right.
All right.
Well, I just want to thank our department heads and Susan. We had a challenging budget year. We asked everybody to please try to keep on an even keel from last year because we anticipate these increased labor costs for next year, and we knew we had the retirement contribution going up for New York State. We knew we were facing increases in these other things that we don't have control over. So they've really done a lot with what they have, and I appreciate it. And thanks for coming tonight.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
I will be back with the next round of presentations for police, fire, and recreation. And of course, I'm always available with whatever questions you may have.
So that will be in 2 weeks.
All right,
Thanks, guys.
thank you all. Drive safely.
Thanks, guys.
Mayor, the city attorney is going to be introducing the next topic.
Okay, are we ready, everybody? Okay. Nick, you're going to talk about the certificate of occupancy for 248, and then we've got somebody
And
here to
Mayor,
talk.
thank you. And so this concerns a request from Beacon 248 Holdings LLC, and their counsel should be present at tonight's meeting, Brad Schwartz of Zarin and Steinmetz, who should speak from the podium. This concerns a request as detailed in Mr. Schwartz's October 11th letter, which is included in the agenda packet. And there's also a copy of the local law concerning the recent amendment by the city to the Fishkill Creek Development District regulations, specifically section 223-41.14 concerning bulk regulations, where you modify the code to allow for good cause shown that the city council can authorize the issuance of certificates of occupancy for the residential units before the non-residential component of a project in the FCD zone is permitted. And you may recall this concerns the 248 Tyranda Avenue project, where the planning board approved a site plan for 3 buildings. Buildings 200 and 300 are residential and constructed, and building 100 is commercial. So tonight you have the representative counsel for the property owner, 248 Beacon Holdings, Brad Schwartz of Zarin and Steinmetz, to walk you through why they believe the council should adopt a resolution authorizing the building inspector to issue COs for buildings 100 and 200. And is Mr. Schwartz present in the room?
Yep.
I am Nick. Good evening.
Right.
And Nick, thank you for that intro. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Mr. White stepped out. So Nick introduced me already. Brad Schwartz from Zarin and Steinmetz representing Beacon 248 Holdings LLC. So as Nick mentioned, we are here with respect to our client's request for your council to authorize the building department to grant CO for the 64 residential units that have already been constructed. I know you're all familiar with the project, but I'll be very brief. It was approved as a mixed-use project, specifically 64 residential units, 6 of which were below market rate, as well as approximately 24,000 square feet of commercial. The resi has been built, the commercial has not, because given the changed economic and market conditions since the original approvals, there's no strong market for commercial use at this time. So without a commercial tenant, the commercial space has not been built. And if Mr. Swanson can put the photographs that I emailed earlier on the screen, just to briefly show the council, this is a drone shot from very recently. You can see the changed leaf conditions already in the trees. So you see the residential buildings that are already constructed. If I can step away from the mic, obviously right here, and here's the commercial pad. The foundation is in, utilities have been stubbed, but obviously it has not been completed. The code contemplated that the commercial and the residential would be constructed together, and frankly, our client expected that the project would be developed and operated as commercial together with residential, but again, the changed market conditions have precluded that at this time. So your code, as Nick mentioned, also now allows your council to authorize COs for residential before completion of the commercial upon good cause shown. We submitted a letter dated October 11th. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review it. We've explained our rationale for why we believe there is good cause here. I want to emphasize it's not just one singular reason, but rather a bundle of items that we believe collectively comprise good cause. First, they would immediately be brought online, the 64 residential units, including the 6 below market rate. The housing shortage, the housing crisis has been well documented in the area, and so this would bring much needed housing to the market for rent immediately. Second, there would be about 1/3 of a mile of additional greenway space immediately made available to the public for recreational and aesthetic enjoyment. Obviously, the greenway would also provide an amenity to the residents of the building. Mr. Swanson, if you could turn to the next slide. I'm just going to step away from the mic again. This is looking at the Greenway Trail coming away from Walcott. The next slide. That's the commercial pad on the foundation. You see the utility stubs. The next slide, please. And so this is now coming towards Walcott with here's the waterfall. You see the trails, all the native landscaping has been installed, the retaining wall has been installed. So that greenway all the way from the street down to the edge of the residential buildings is available, again, to be open to the public as soon as the CO is issued. And third is just economic activity, right? The site is now currently sitting inactive, and so the CO and bringing residents to this property would result in annual new tax revenues, approximately $300,000 per year gross in new tax revenues, as well as, of course, the spending by the new residents in the city at the local restaurants and shops and so forth. So new housing, Greenway Trail recreation, as well as economic activity in this way of taxes and new spending in your city. The CO would also allow time for our client to continue their ongoing expanded marketing efforts, which I know your council has encouraged them to do. This is a challenging site. I mentioned the changed market conditions. It's also a little bit off the beaten path away from Main Street. So there's some complexity here. Our client initially chose not to go with an exclusive broker and listed on the MLS, thinking that letting the local major brokers know that the commercial space was available would be a good way to spread the word and kind of weed out any unrealistic interest. That didn't work. And so, again, at your council's urging, our client has now pivoted and has now gone exclusive with Berkshire Hathaway. It's now listed. I provided your council with the brochure that's online. You have the link to the website. I could tell you that in the first month, there have been 776 viewers. So again, it goes back to the reason for the initial approach of trying to weed out some of the unrealistic hits. We haven't had 776 phone calls. There's been a couple of conversations by the broker. I'm not going to divulge into too much detail, but high level, there's really no major anchor tenant has surfaced. Some folks are interested in maybe 9 months or a year from now when their current lease comes up, but even them, it's been 1,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet, not the kind of sizable, credible anchor tenant that we need to activate this space as commercial. So even the few conversations we haven't yielded a real option as a commercial tenant. So this approach of issuing the CO now, again, would activate the site for all the benefits I already mentioned, while allowing additional time for this marketing effort to unfold. And of course, we would keep your council apprised with regular updates as to our status on those efforts. The last point I'll make, I've watched the prior meetings when your council has discussed this topic. I get that there's a concern about, well, if the CO gets issued, the commercial space may just remain stagnant, right? Our client's just going to disappear and not finish the project. I can assure you that's not the case for a couple of different practical reasons. The first one, there would be folks living in these 64 units who would be really unhappy, right, if the entrance of the project remained as it currently stands. So if it remains in this condition for too long, they'll be calling our clients, asking what's going on, make a change, right? The second is there's currently a construction loan outstanding on the commercial piece. So the sooner the project in one form or another gets completed, that construction loan can either get cashed out or converted to a permanent mortgage, lower interest rate. So there's a benefit there in trying to get rid of that construction loan as soon as possible. And look, our clients invest in the property, purchase the property, expecting to develop the entire project. It's not in their interest to just complete 2/3 of it and then let the last third remain unfinished, especially when they've already invested in the foundation and the other work that went into that building. So, in short, we believe there's good cause shown. Allow us the time to complete the additional marketing. We'll stay in dialogue with the city. We're not going to just disappear on you all. That's our request.
Can I ask a quick question about the definition of good cause? I took the definition of good cause to mean that there were good reasons why the applicant was asking for this. But the way that we're talking about it today, good cause sounds like three benefits to the city of going ahead with this. Nick, can you help with that?
I can, Dan. The language is, just for the benefit of the discussion, for good cause shown, the city council may, upon imposition of such conditions as it deems appropriate, allow certificates of occupancy to be issued for dwelling units or artist-live workspaces prior to the non-residential component being completed. So for good cause shown, we are offering a relief from the development of the units, which is otherwise, the development of the non-commercial space, which is otherwise required. But I don't think the language ties you to one or the other. I think it's a combination of both, right? Is there good cause? Because the good cause shown may be a delay, but there also may be the benefits because of a reasonable delay. So I think you're looking at them in tandem.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight the public benefits, right? The good cause on the private side is, again, the lack of a market for a commercial tenant right now. And so it wouldn't make good economic sense to now invest and complete out a building for a use that may not materialize at the site, or even if a commercial user does come along, there may be a different request for the fit out of the building. This was always intended to be built out for a specific, end user in sort of a specialized way.
I have a question, and I'm not sure who this should be directed to. Why was commercial not built out before or concurrently with the residential development of the site as it was supposed to be done when this developer got approval?
So my client's not here tonight, so I'm not certain of the answer to that question. But I could tell you that the approvals were issued, the amended approvals, shortly after the pandemic started. So I'm gathering that market conditions changed pretty quickly thereafter, as soon as folks weren't coming into office and going out shopping commercially, and there was a lot more stay at home, right? So the residential proceeded first, and the commercial lagged behind until there was a market that had shown that it could support that use.
Did they communicate that with the city when they realized that years ago? Because that was I'm reading it right here.
What are you reading from?
I am reading it from the code.
Right.
That it says the 25%, the minimum of 25% of the total development's floor area must be permitted non-residential uses other than dwelling units or artist live workspaces, which must be built out before or concurrently with the residential development of the site, which this site clearly has not been done. And I have a problem with that.
And I can add to that also that there was an application to the zoning board to build the residential and the commercial on separate timelines to get an exception to the language that Pam was sharing. And I don't recall that that application to the zoning board was approved. So it seems that the applicant may have gone ahead and done something that they asked the zoning board to do, but the zoning board did not grant. And I guess I'd just like to get clarification on that from either Mr. Schwartz or our attorney.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think just a general timeline from the point of the first approval, I think they went back to the planning board. There have been several steps they've taken over the years, and so I think for us to understand all the steps we've taken, I think that's critical for us determining whether or not this applicant meets whatever our criteria is for good cause. I appreciate the benefits to the city, but I think also understanding whether or not this applicant upheld our laws is important.
Yeah, our applicant received amended approvals in April of 2020, again about a month after the pandemic began, and there was a further minor amendment in November of 2021 that simply reduced the height of the building and expanded the bulk, so that was physical changes to the layout. I'm not aware of the zoning board proceeding, but I could certainly inquire and address that at another time.
Yeah, I think if you're able with the applicant to put together a letter form so us and the public can see that, that would be very helpful. Because we're not members of the planning board, so we're not maybe as familiar with all the details as they are over the years that the applicant came before them.
Again, the zoning board, I'm not familiar with, but every conversation I've had with our client, again, what I've always been told was it would not make sense to build out the commercial pad without having a commercial tenant in place. Different than residential, that market was strong, and you could go ahead and build anticipating that the tenants would follow, whereas again, a commercial on spec, especially in the pandemic climate, would not have been a smart business decision. As far as what communications with the city, application to the zoning board, I can't speak to that. All I can assure you is that now I'm involved, I'm standing before you, I could attest that my clients wouldn't just disappear and not be communicative, and you could certainly condition any resolution to this request in requiring us to come back and give periodic updates, both in writing. We could come back before you and give presentation. Again, it's listed for commercial. Our client, I said it in my letter, it would be terrific if we could find a commercial tenant. It would be easier than having to now design and figure out a residential building to complete the project. It would be a lot easier and quicker to finish this as a commercial use. The marketing efforts are ongoing, and we can remain in communication with your council on those efforts.
Yeah, the one thing that you said actually made economic sense, which is for residential construction, because it's atomized, right, it's small units, one could make the decision to build without having to have the tenants in place ahead of time. I recognize on commercial construction that is not the case.
Yeah.
Having worked in the banking industry, that's absolutely a correct statement. That doesn't necessarily explain Pam's question, right? But at least lays out a rationale as to why our law may not have made a ton of sense written the way it was written. Because that's a different statement than Pam's. Right?
If it was single-family homes, in contrast, where purchasers had more say in the finishes and the details, different story, right?
I
But
understand.
in this kind of a multifamily building, that's how construction works. So Mayor, yes, I agree with that.
I'm just afraid that if something is approved, whether it's proven of good cause, whatever definition it is for the moment, we're setting a precedent if we approve this, because then the next applicant will come forward and say, you allowed it for this, and it's part of our law.
But again, here, keep in mind that our client also wanted to conform to the code and build a mixed-use project. The entire site was cleared at one time, thinking they were going to build the commercial. It was the economic conditions, the market conditions that changed hence again, good cause, that has now resulted in the predicament that we're in. So the slippery slope, which I hear you, and I hear before a lot of boards, but every application is unique and is to be judged on its own facts. And here, we have a project that got amended approvals literally as a pandemic started, that changed the landscape of conditions for commercial and office space, which we're still confronting today, right? Nick knows, I mean, so much of what we're dealing with is what do we do with office space and commercial space and retail space that's now sitting vacant, and how do we repurpose it primarily for housing? So the slippery slope, I think here there's a unique set of circumstances that are explainable. Again, our client cleared the site all at once, expecting to build out the commercial, wanted nothing more than to build out the entire site as a mixed-use project, and could not do so for conditions, market conditions, out of its control.
I'm sorry, but the law didn't change, and an exception to the law wasn't granted, right? The market conditions are not the law in Beacon.
So we're here now asking for that relief.
I think
Right,
that was 2021 when that relief was requested.
Yeah, the issue that I've got is not with respect to this project. I'm looking at our law, and I'm a primary author. And nobody at the time of doing this thought that the two markets, residential and commercial, would go in absolutely opposite directions as they have now, right? Residential construction is in very short supply and very high demand, and commercial construction has gone to zero. In fact, it's going negative, right? Because as mentioned, commercial office space in particular, but other forms of other forms of commercial, including retail, are actually being converted, so that the total number of square footage in the United States is declining, not growing. No one could have imagined that at the time that we wrote this, but it's very clear to me, and again, independent of this discussion, that we need to alter the law.
So, Dan, I was not aware and did not recall, but there was an application made to the ZBA in April of 2021, and those materials are online. I'll provide that link to Mr. Schwartz. We'll also get a copy of a resolution from the ZBA, which is not available online, and provide that to Mr. Schwartz and the council members.
Thanks, Nick.
That'd be helpful.
And look, I'll certainly look into it, but then that at least indicates to me that the applicant was communicating with the city through a variance request, and now there's a different pathway to achieve the relief that's being sought through this authorization by your council. And again, I think a fair and appropriate condition can be placed that would require the continuous dialogue with the council. I hear the concern about potentially granting this, and then we go away and you don't hear from us again, and I think we could condition this to address that concern.
My concern is the next applicant who does this, and then they go away.
Yeah.
That's more of my concern.
And I think as the mayor mentioned, perhaps a way that the city can address that more holistically is to revisit this law, given now the change that the opportunity for a true mixed use to run concurrently with residential and commercial at the same time, that time may just have passed.
So
Well, yours timing did pass because you have about 95% residential done and 10% commercial. If that, I think I'm being generous there.
Yeah, I doubt that this will occur again.
Yeah.
Under our current zoning, and given current market conditions, no one will start a project, period. Right? There's just no way that this works economically. Again, it doesn't address the question of timing with respect to the construction of the commercial at the same time as the residential. But there's just no way in the universe, given the current economics, that any project will work unless we alter the zoning.
Yeah. And to emphasize again, it's not, you saw the picture, right? The construction pad, there's a foundation, there's utilities, the site was cleared. So work began on the commercial, it didn't finish, right? So even under the current climate, it wasn't as if that third pad was just left completely untouched and ignored, again, demonstrating the intent to build both together. There just wasn't a specific tenant to finish the construction based on specific design requests.
It's not how our law is written.
I get that. And the law was written, I'm sure, with good intention, but then pretty significant market condition change, global pandemic, and then the law didn't match practicality on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yeah, the property next to it, I mean, there is a major road between it. They have commercial, but this one does not. Have
But
you
keep in mind-
have they communicated with people within Beacon? Because I have heard several artists, music artists and sound, that they're looking for space.
Performing arts?
Yeah. And even performing arts and, you know, people who, musicians and need a sound studio, that kind of thing, they're looking at space and they're looking at Fishkill Avenue over where the car dealerships are. Maybe they could be steered over, you know, it's just as far, I mean, you're closer to Main Street on Tyranda than 52 is.
Well,
In that area.
If you know
of
those
the
folks,
auto.
have them reach out. I could assure you that our clients have been in touch with Daniel Aubrey Realty, Keller Williams, Houlihan Lawrence, now Berkshire. So our clients are talking to all the key brokers in the area. So the word is on the street. Again, over 700 views on the MLS. So we're trying to cast our net as wide as possible. Someone looking for music or performing space to take a good chunk of a 25,000 square foot building just hasn't surfaced yet.
Council members, I misspoke, it was not April, it was heard before the ZBA in July 20th and August 17th of 2021, and we'll provide that information to the council and Mr. Schwartz.
Okay. Any other questions? So are there to-dos before we want to move forward? Or do we want to have another discussion, or what are we all thinking?
I'm sensing, Mayor, that we need to provide the materials to the council members and the applicant, have them explain why that's different from what's before the council today. Also provide the timeline that the council members have asked, and also provide some of the additional information to questions that were asked today. And then bring this back for subsequent workshop.
That sounds about right. Everybody okay with that, including the applicant's representative?
The answer, Mayor, is yes, we will provide that information. Ideally, we could provide it maybe as soon as this week and try to come back next week for further discussion and possibly a decision, but I gather by the looks that I'm getting, we'll come back next workshop.
Okay, so.
Okay.
All right. I appreciate your presence and the presentation, and I thank you.
Thank you for hearing me out. I'll see you next time.
Okay.
Good night.
Nick, I assume you'll talk to the applicant's representative and work out what it is you suggested should be prepared for the next time?
That is correct, Mayor, yes, we'll do so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be away for that workshop on the 28th, but I'm interested in reaching out directly myself to some of our local real estate agents, and to Pam's point, sort of, are there enough businesses, and would it make economic sense in a building of this size, and just kind of get some of that professional perspective on how things, you know, what might be viable. Because I'm thinking too about what we want in Beacon, that we do want commercial space. We don't want to be a bedroom community, and is there a future viability for this place? To Lee's point, do we have to look at the underlying zoning? So just getting some of their perspective on it as well might be helpful.
Yeah, I think what you're going to discover is, given vacant office space and vacant retail space, it's far cheaper to go rent there than it will be to rent brand new, newly constructed space. So I think this will be uneconomical relative to the availability of supply right now. But I'd be interested to hear what a
Yeah. No,
says.
that's, I'm looking for people other than those who have an economic stake in us making a certain decision, just to get some other perspective. And I appreciate real estate agents also have commissions they make, so they might be motivated to say things to us for certain reasons, but I'm happy to get more perspectives. So.
Yeah.
And as you consider that question, I hear you. Just also appreciate the distinction between the location of this site away from Main Street. It's not going to get the foot traffic. So this is a little bit off the beaten path
Yeah, to
location.
Pam's point, we actually have a number of people we know collectively in this community who are not looking for retail space. They're not looking for foot traffic. In fact, they kind of want a bit of that distance. So I'm curious to see what our professionals have to say about it.
I
so.
mean this genuinely. If you all know, Nick has my contact. Obviously, Nick knows how to find me. Then make the introductions.
Right, and it might not make sense. They're not going to take over the tens of thousands of square feet. So I appreciate there's different economic models out there to make it work. So.
Yeah, I think we should all be careful, too, of conflicts of interest, of recommending businesses.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be really
Right.
inappropriate
So
for the
let's all
council to refer business to you.
Have the folks you know go through the brokers.
That would be ideal.
Okay.
Good night again.
Thank you all. Appreciate it, sir. Okay, let's see if we can finish off the agenda for the evening. The next two are Chris. There are two appointments, one of Kevin Glinsky to firefighter, and then the other one, Emma Malatesta to police dispatcher. Chris, you want to give us the
I'm
bits?
sorry, I don't think I have.
Yeah, I don't have the
I don't
firefighter.
have Kevin in my. I only have Emma in the packet. Yeah, I don't remember.
go to the
seeing-
agenda. If you
Oh,
go to
did
the
it get
agenda, it's on
updated
there.
after
Sorry,
Monday?
it did get updated, and I'll
Okay.
explain why it got updated. So,
Go ahead.
This is, in my eyes, very good news. Kevin Glinsky was a firefighter with our city department. About 2 years ago, he left to go work for Arlington Fire Department, which is one of the highest paying departments in the area. Subsequently, Kevin bought a house in Beacon, and he wants to be back in Beacon. He sees the new firehouse. I think the word on the street is that our new chief is doing an amazing job with the fire department, and he expressed interest in coming back. We have somebody who is retiring in the first quarter of next year, and we wanted to hire Kevin while he's still available. He is fully trained. He's ready to go. Right now, we have 16 people working in the fire department, one on kind of long-term injury. So we had hired that 17th person to help us drive down overtime so that we had somebody to float if someone else got injured, somebody's on a vacation, takes any other kind of extended leave. So we've lost that person to help us trim overtime. Kevin could now be that floater. And then when the person that is retiring in the first quarter of next year does retire, he'll just go back in that, and we won't backfill the position. Kevin's gear is still with the company, so not only are we benefiting from the fact that he's fully trained, his gear is actually still here, and it is a great boost to the morale of the department to have somebody come back from Arlington. It never goes that way. We lose to Arlington. Arlington has never lost to us. So we're excited about this. We would, if you approve him, we would hire him the Tuesday after the vote next week. And he would immediately help us kind of bring down the rate of overtime use.
And I can't access the materials. It's not like on the city
I'm
website
sorry.
at the moment. So I just want to clarify, I'm just unclear on, like, he's not necessarily backfilling an open position. It's kind of a, like, proactive because we know somebody is going to be retiring.
Yes.
Okay.
And we had the position on our books because when we created the 4 lieutenant positions, we didn't close out the firefighter position.
Okay, so there is an open position.
There's
That's
a
what I'm trying to
yeah,
understand.
but again, budgetarily, we only budgeted for 17 officers. We think this will be budget neutral to take on an 18th because it will help to bring down the overtime, and early next year or late this year when the other person retires, we won't have to pay the thousands of dollars for the training and also the time for the training.
Okay.
So it's a proactive, we got ahead of the curve with the 17th, and that saved us a lot of money when this person was injured. And we hope they come back at some point, but again, it helped to stem that. But we've lost that capacity now that this person's been out for a while.
Okay, thank you.
So when the person retires, I wouldn't backfill that position again. We're going to try for the SAFER grant again next year to see if we can get, at some point, you're going to need to go from 4 to 5 just to have a safe contingent. Again, we have some volunteers, but you're going to need another round of staffing increases at some point in the future to maintain safety. We'd like to do that through the SAFER grant, so this is just kind of an interim step.
Okay.
And he's very well thought of by the department. They were somewhat devastated to lose him. And it's just great that he's coming back, and he lives in Beacon, and he wants to be here.
Yeah,
We
he
want
sounds
him
like a
back.
great fit, and you said the magic words, budget neutral, so he's,
Yeah, actually, the chief worked up a detailed overtime analysis, and we would pay his salary through reduction in overtime.
Great.
And then also the avoided cost of the time and cost of training, and then the gear.
Right,
So if
bringing
it was a
someone else
new
on.
applicant,
Yeah.
you'd be sending them to, I don't know, fire training up in Utica or somewhere else, for many weeks that you're paying them, and at a cost for the training. So it's really a win. It's something that was somewhat unexpected, and we'll take it. And then the second hire is for Emma Malatesta. You had approved back in August the hiring of George White for a position of dispatcher, basically to backfill the dispatcher who became an officer. George lasted 5 days and then quit. So we're backfilling that position again. We interviewed 6 people, and Emma was head and shoulders the top candidate. Had a great interview. She has been a volunteer with ambulance and fire services. Her recommendations were effusive. I mean, they highly recommended her. Has been good under pressure, good, service skills, and a great attitude. So we're proposing to hire her. And George did not quit because he was unhappy here. He actually decided to become a corrections officer. So he started doing this, and then he thought he wanted to do a different track. So people do that. Luckily, we have somebody that we think is going to be a good fit.
Yeah, was there any, and that was my one question, any insight offered about what Emma wants to do with her career? It sounds like maybe something in first responder.
It could be. I mean, she's working in restaurants right now. She's been in the service industry for a while, and I think she wants to make the jump into emergency services. And we're always looking for people in the future who might want to take the police exam.
Right,
And,
yeah.
We've had good success with that with Isabella Nocerino, who worked her way through being dispatcher and is now in training. She's at Police Academy.
Great.
So, yeah, these are both going to be good hires for us.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to tell us about...
I'm going to tell you about Ty and Bond.
All right.
So Ty and Bond is an outside engineering consultant that did the design and worked through kind of multiple iterations of what we would do with the dewatering system and the building itself. As I mentioned, that bid is coming back on October 24th. We do need to have somebody who does construction observation and construction administration. That's everything from, reviewing shop drawings to make sure that what the contractor is proposing is in alignment with the plans, making sure that the equipment is properly spec'd, and overseeing every aspect of the project, much like Palumbo Group has been doing with the firehouse. The rate would be, it's a not-to-exceed contract of $432,900. Again, they would bill towards that, so if it takes less time, it's less money, and that's exactly what we're doing on the Fishkill-Teller Avenue project. They did a great job in design. We haven't used them for construction inspection, but they're very, very knowledgeable and diligent, and we'd like to get them in place before the bid comes back so they can help to evaluate the bids, go through, and there's some complexity. We have things that may or may not go, building improvements, depending on how much the bids come back in at.
Procedurally, I just want to make sure I understand. So this isn't something that we have to send out as an RFP? Is it because we already did it, or because we're already working with them, or just this type of arrangement doesn't require an RFP?
So that's a great question. It's a little of all of that. So I don't know that we ever did an original RFP. They've been doing special projects for the wastewater treatment for a number of years. Nick, I don't know if you remember if there was an RFP, but it's not required for professional services.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall, Chris. I would say, but right, the city has the discretion because you're hiring professionals to determine who's familiar with the project, who's worked in this area before, and when you get into certain specialty areas, you're going to be less likely to do an RFP because it's a unique skill and you've worked with those individuals. So you're weighing here best practices versus reality on the grounds in your experience.
And just for reference, when we did the firehouse construction inspection, we didn't do an RFP. We just knew that Palumbo Group had done projects, including one with me 10 years ago, and they were very good at doing buildings. They wouldn't necessarily be the the entity that I'd hire for this because it's very specialized.
Sure.
A lot of it is just the wastewater treatment process.
Okay.
And we found Ty and Bond to be good, and they're responsive, and I think they'll do a good job.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have an objection. I just wanted to understand the process.
Yeah,
And
but the bid the physical work has to be bid, and it's bid in two sections. It's general contractor and the electrical.
Okay.
So we'll be awarding two. Generally, you award two unless it's the same company and they've won both bids.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Then last item is just concerning a local law on police department and mutual aid, which is a cleanup law. Nick, you want to tell us about it?
I will, Mayor. Thank you. And that's an accurate description. So Dutchess County wishes to enter into an MOU with a number of jurisdictions, including the city of Beacon, for the sharing of police resources through the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office or the City of Beacon Police Department for mutual aid. Similar to when the fire department has a fire where they need outside assistance, occasionally the Sheriff's Office or the City of Beacon may require mutual aid from another municipality. So the county provided us with a proposed memorandum of agreement, an IMA, an intermunicipal agreement for the mutual aid. However, the county is requesting that we have a statement in there that the city is in compliance with a provision of the New York State General Municipal Law that says the mayor has delegated the authority to the chief of police to request the mutual aid. Our position is that the charter vests such authority with the mayor. The mayor, by assigning a police officer, has the ability to delegate that authority. The county has requested that we have this language. A number of other municipalities have adopted that language. So to provide for proper assurances and to make sure that if in the event there's any claim that authority wasn't granted, the best thing to do is to, as the mayor said, do some cleanup language. So there would be a local law, section 51-18 of the city code, that authorizes, pursuant to the New York State General Municipal Law, the chief of police of the city to have the authority and power to send or request police assistance to and from other neighboring municipalities. And this requires a public hearing, if you're comfortable with the local law, to be scheduled at Monday's meeting or your meeting in 2 weeks thereafter.
Nick, does the memorandum cover, oh, sorry. Did I just?
Oh, you can go ahead, Dan.
Does the memorandum cover overtime costs and?
So when there is the request made, the agency that is providing it is absorbing those costs.
Okay.
But and let me, maybe a little background would be helpful too, because this occurs now. We are in a mutual aid system that's poorly defined and it doesn't have guardrails on it. This agreement would basically put guardrails on, and that's mainly about like what happens if your officer gets hurt somewhere else. That's one of the questions that comes up. We generally benefit more from people coming in to help us because of our small minimum shift than we go outside the city doing. Like we've had some nights where there was like a bar melee, and we've had to bring in people from 3 or 4 jurisdictions around us. And this helps to protect them as well. So agency that is being requested to deploy resources, for instance, if we just have a minimum shift of 4, our chief of police can say we don't have the extra staffing. It will really depend on the context. And this is really for emergency events, like you have a school shooting event, or you have a major disaster in a municipality, or I think you had that one day with like 100 motorbikes that overran Wappingers, and they called in police from jurisdictions all over. So it's for things that are just where things are getting out of control. They don't have the local officers to help. This kind of partnership is a good way for a bunch of small departments all to leverage the resources of each other, and it's essentially what we do with fire. So I think you don't lose local control. We certainly, if we don't have enough officers, we're not going to take one or bring somebody in on overtime. They can bring somebody in on overtime. It's just, say Fishkill has an emergency and we have a couple people that aren't, doing a call right then, they can help to respond. And it sets guidelines so that we're both safe in doing that.
Is it appropriate to see the that memorandum?
Yeah. I mean, that would be your second vote. I think that we can get that in the packet for next week, Jeff. We have a draft agreement. We've gone through and made some recommended changes, but we'll upgrade that. The thought was we passed the law, then you'd have to approve the agreement to allow the mayor to sign it. But Ben, if you could put that in the packet, I'll get that to you tomorrow.
Would the MOU also cover large events, even if they're pre-known, or is that a separate process?
It wouldn't be a pre-planned thing necessarily. It's kind of when things go wrong.
Okay.
And we have used it. We've called in. I'm forgetting the specific event, but we had officers here from 3 departments to help.
Yeah.
I just remembered Paloma had a question.
Oh, sorry,
thanks,
Paloma.
Dan.
Thanks for remembering, Dan.
That's okay. Chris, you actually basically answered my question naturally, which was, could you compare how things work right now with what this addition to the law might change? And you're saying, if I understood correctly, that operations would not change significantly since we are doing mutual aid already?
Yeah, it just codifies what we're doing and then clarifies who's responsible if somebody gets hurt.
And can you clarify what, I know that currently our current chief and you, Chris, and the mayor have modes of communication, but in thinking about this law, several mayors or several chiefs into the future, what guardrails are there in terms of accountability around the chief making calls that perhaps the mayor or the administration would disagree with?
Well, that's a good question. With our form of government, you have both the mayor and the city administrator that the chief of police answers to. And again,
right.
we often will, I'm not going to second guess, like if Chief Figlia said, this was an urgent situation and we evaluated our resources here and we thought we could spare a person or two. I'm generally not going to try to judge that after the case. We certainly debrief. The mayor or the city administrator could tell the chief of police conditions under which they could grant this, or they could withdraw from the agreement if it's not working. Ultimately, the city is in the agreement, not the police department. So you still maintain, civilian decision-making over whether we participate at all in it.
So the way the law is written, it is not giving away authority from the mayor to the chief of police to respond?
It's authorizing the chief to have that authority, which in our view already has when the mayor delegates that to him.
Yeah, like
I see. That's why this isn't a charter change.
Right. The department heads and I have delegated authority from the mayor. So,
Right.
again, this is happening on a regular basis. We participate in certain activities. You may know we have a police officer in the Dutchess County Drug Task Force, and, you know, in a way, you'd say, well, why are we sending an officer out? But when we've had major operations in the city, that task force has been here to help us at no additional cost to the city. So I would say what I've seen over the tenure that I've been here is that this system has benefited the city more than it's cost the city.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, when I viewed this as belts and suspenders, right? Because it's very clear that the authority of the elected official, meaning the mayor, is delegated out either to the city administrator or from there or directly to department heads. And I just don't see the significance. I understand why they might want to write it down to get a mutual aid agreement. So fine, let's do that. But I don't think it changes anything.
Yeah, and
quite frankly.
if a future police chief was making decisions that a future mayor and or future city administrator disagreed with, they could tell him to stop.
Yeah.
And if he didn't stop, that would be insubordination, or she stopped.
Yeah.
That would be insubordination.
And the terms of the MOU, do we know for how long it would stand? Would it be revisited at some point?
I generally, they do 5-year agreements. Do you know, Nick?
My recollection is 5 years.
Yeah. They seem to like 5-year agreements.
Yes, so it's up to, it's an annual which can be renewed automatically for 1-year terms not to exceed 5 years. So yes, Chris, 5-year term, but it's a 1 year, and it can be canceled as well.
So we have a right to withdraw from the agreement if it's not working out for us.
Got it.
Yeah. I mean, these are questions we asked when it came to me. I mean, my first reaction was, I don't have enough officers to cover shift right now. Why would I send somebody out of town? And it was quickly explained to me that we're on the benefiting side of this equation.
The agreement can be terminated upon 10 days' notice by either party.
Yeah. So we'll
Yeah,
bring
and
that,
that
we'll get
makes-
that agreement in so you can look at it, and that would be a separate vote from the law itself.
I'm sorry, can I ask possibly the same question we've asked? I just want to ask it a different way. The way that this language is written, if the chief of police were to authorize, sending out police officers to another town, and the mayor disagreed with the police chief, where does it say that the mayor can override the police chief? Or does the police chief have absolute power to do this, regardless of what the mayor thinks?
Well, the city charter provides that all the department heads are responsible in answer to the mayor.
Right.
And act at the mayor's request. So if there is that dispute, this is granting the authority for the chief to do it so that the county knows they can rely on the chief.
Mm-hmm.
As to how that works between the mayor and the chief is resolved in
Got it.
one or two ways.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Yep.
The mayor is the only official who has the power to terminate in the city.
Right.
I do not have that power.
Everybody good? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Good discussion.
All right, just our next, for the record, Councilmember Demansky is here. So when we go back to do our roll call, right?
Are you sure?
We'll talk about that later. All right. Okay.
And Lee, could I just give a quick update? Paving is happening the rest of this week. We should mostly be done by Friday. Cherry Street is going to be paved next Monday. It has been reclaimed already. So the end is in sight. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
All these phrases. When you enter Beacon, there should be like a Men at Work sign or a...
I know.
We're just going to play that song from Men at Work. You know,
Okay.
It's been a busy fall.
No,
Yeah.
I have to announce the next meeting, which is the 21st, which is a Monday at 7 o'clock. It will be an official meeting. And now I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
So that was
Bam.
Amber and Molly, all in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Dan, all right, Dan.
Oh,
Pam.
I said Pam. It was
Pam.
Molly and Pam at the same
Molly,
time.
okay,
It's
Amber and Pam. Anyone opposed? And then, for the record, Paloma?
Aye.
Okay.
No
Good night, everyone.
opposition.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Very special question from my nephew.